An early wedding gift.
Dave and I had been married for about 4 years when we decided it was time to expand our little family. I met Dave during a deposition at the health insurance company I worked for. He was the lead plaintiff's attorney, and I was one of the 6 defending a vulnerable position. Dave was and remains a brilliant attorney, a willing partner destined to make millions in the fight for justice. While I am a competent attorney, I would not claim to reach his class, so I was surprised to hear from him shortly after the lawsuit was settled. What he needed, however, was not my legal help, but something more carnal, and over the course of numerous dinners, drinks, dances, and events, I discovered that he was a witty and charming conversationalist. Love has been everything we could wish for. Dave is a resourceful and attentive lover, and I was gifted by nature with a passionate and responsive body. Dave loves it when I get on top of him and bring him to satisfaction while he plays with my size 4 breasts, and I just float away in bliss. A wedding followed, and we settled into one of those ubiquitous gated communities that seem to grow like weeds all over Long Island for the wealthy. At least those with a few million on a 4-bedroom ranch that's too small for the price and too big for the 2 of us. But we have room to grow, and we have room for an au pair in case I want to go back to work. Like many privileged couples, we've been living the American dream with more money than a young couple can count on, and at times it has seemed like the only problem we face is the number of hours Dave works. Although we're both lawyers, my job is more of an office job, 9 to 5, while he spent a lot of time achieving the almighty partnership. So I often have to attend the perpetual meetings, barbecues, dinners, wine tastings, and general neighborhood gatherings that life in a gated community leads to. It was during these many meetings that I became friends with Joanna and, by extension, her husband, Walter. The couple intrigued me, and since I had some free time and I was on vacation for the last month of my pregnancy, I decided to find out what I could. No, I didn't hire a private investigator or dig into their personal lives. I just struck up a friendship with Joanna since she didn't work and lived only 2 houses down from us. I was intrigued, but not to the point of madness. There's a mystery there, but not one I desperately need to solve. Walter, I gather, is a certified public accountant and has his own small firm. Oddly, unlike other self-employed entrepreneurs, he never seeks out new clients or tries to network. He looks like an accountant in his early 40s, balding with a potbelly but not fat. He doesn't look like an athlete, just a bookish, nerdy type of man about 5'73", and he often has a slightly aloof or confused demeanor. He never seems to fully fit in with the guys, doesn't golf, doesn't fish, doesn't drink, isn't the stereotypical alpha male that our little community is teeming with. He is also, oddly enough for a married man, a little shy around women. Always polite, always a gentleman, but without being ostentatious, he mostly blends in with those around him. Joanna, on the contrary, is beautiful, lively, energetic, flirtatious. She is about 30 years old, but she looks younger, and she is entirely devoted to Walter. She has a smile that would put the Mona Lisa to shame, a body, despite having 2 children, that even on my best day I couldn't hope to match, breasts the size of small pineapples, perhaps enlarged, and a mysterious sultriness that just screams love. I'd only seen her angry twice, once when some men had mocked Walter in her presence, and she'd verbally reprimanded them in such a way that they'd scurried away with their tails between their legs, and the other time when one of the local catchers had tried to pull his tricks on her. I think he was happy to have his testicles intact, but she made it loudly and openly clear that if he or anyone else tried to do such a thing, they wouldn't get away with it. What she has is strictly for Walter and no one else. She is visibly, sometimes to the point of nausea, in love with Walter, and this is obvious to all of us except, oddly enough, Walter himself, who seemed oblivious to all of this. He clearly loves her, treats her perfectly and respectfully, seems completely devoted to her, but is nerdy enough not to notice the clues that everyone else sees. Or maybe having lived with it for so long, he's just accepted it as natural. Like I said, they live 2 houses down from here, so they have the money to live here, but they don't seem to have the toys that are so widely displayed by the rest of the neighborhood. The cars are devoid of zest, nothing fancy. There are no boats in the yard, no 2-foot televisions, no man dens with mahogany bars that others brag about. They have a nice yard with a pool, a regular-sized BBQ like most houses around here, but nothing flashy. I'd never heard her complain about not having enough money, but she wasn't into the latest fashions either. She didn't wear much jewelry. A modest but decent engagement ring, a gold wedding band, and the always gold earrings that looked like two little cylinders. I think they have money for toys, but no need to compete by flaunting them. They have 2 children, a 6-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. Both are well-behaved little souls, and their father and mother clearly have custody of them. They are looked after by a Latina girl who is a sort of maid and nanny, as well as Joan, who is a stay-at-home mom. But even in that, they are perfectly normal. From what I understand, the son attends one of the best private schools in the area, but nothing special, because he's only 6 years old. His mom drives him to school and picks him up afterward while his dad is at work and the nanny looks after the little girl. By then, I was 8 months pregnant and had taken a vacation at work. I was used to walking every morning to stretch out a bit, although I kept pretty close to home, so I was out early when I saw Joan taking her son to school. We chatted for a bit, and I invited her to have coffee with me after we got home. She had a busy morning planned, dropping her son off, going to the gym, then shopping, but she promised to stop by for coffee and a chat by lunchtime. I knew there was something between them, some story just waiting to be told, but I didn't expect to get it on the same day. I was wrong. Joanna was a little late. We were sitting around drinking coffee and chatting about pregnancy and babies in general when I asked her if she was planning on having more children. It all depends on Walter. Whatever he says will happen. If he wants more, we'll have more. If not, we won't. I noticed that when she said that, she was fiddling with her little gold earring, a nervous habit I'd seen her do several times when it came to Walter. But you have an opinion too, because this isn't the 19th century. It's not like he can get you pregnant. No, Walter would never do that. He's a really nice man, and I couldn't hope for a nicer man to marry. It's not that he'd force me to do anything, it's just that I'd do anything to make him happy, and that includes having children or not having children or whatever he wants. You really love him that much, don't you? We all see the way you act with him, like he's God's gift to women and you won the prize. That's how you treat him. Honestly, I've never seen anything like that until I met you two. Still, sometimes he seems pretty clueless, like he doesn't understand what you do for him. And hopefully he never will, she said, twirling her earring again. I looked at her a little hard, as the statement was odd. You don't want him to know how much you love him. It's not that. It's hard to explain. Let me ask you a question, Roberta. You're a lawyer, and if I tell you something, can you keep it a secret, like a lawyer's client's secret that's always talked about? I can if you hire me. Are you in some kind of trouble? Is Walter hurting you or threatening you? No, nothing like that. It's just that I have a story I'd like to tell someone just in case, but it can never, and I mean never, happen again. What does it take to hire you? It's pretty simple. Just give me something like $10 as a down payment and we can make a verbal contract establishing attorney-client privilege. She grabbed her purse, pulled out a 20, handed it to me, and smiled. Consider yourself hired. I grew up on Long Island, but not this part of it, she began. My father was a roofer, and half of what he earned was spent at the bar, so we never had much money. My mom worked as a hairdresser and brought home a little something, but we were definitely on the lower end of the middle class, not like this neighborhood. Because of his drinking and promiscuity and their fighting, it's a wonder I made it to the end of high school. But I managed to get into secretarial school. When I met Walter, I was working at a staffing agency, meaning I was running short-term errands. His secretary was on maternity leave, and her assistant was filling in for her, and they hired me to fill in for her, so I was kind of a second in command. And when was this? About 10 years ago. I was 24 years old, already tired of partying and starting to look around for someone to settle down with. I'll admit I was a bit of a self-serving little fool, thinking about finding a well-to-do husband for a few years and then moving on with a decent fortune, and Walter seemed to fit the bill perfectly. He was 32 then, 8 years older than I was, and even more ignorant and inexperienced than he was now. I didn't consider him rich, but he had his own business, a nice apartment in a good part of town, and he seemed like the perfect candidate for a starter husband. I started dating him after my tenure at his office ended and soon moved in with him. About a year later, we were married. Walter was sweet and malleable, and I thought I could manage him for as long as I needed to. He was also completely trustworthy and never brought up the prenup. I'm not proud of being a gold digger, but I won't sugarcoat it either. And here you are, 10 years later and still happily married. Yes, I am. We had a pretty ordinary engagement. The only condition of our marriage was that I wanted a house, a real house that we could call our own. I've lived in rented apartments all my life. We looked around and chose the one we have now. I thought it was a little big, but Walter wanted a place for the kids. And even though I wasn't going to have kids, I didn't want to disappoint him before we were married. The good news for me was that he didn't even blink an eye when he found out the price and had no problem including me in the contract. However, there was one event that happened shortly before the wedding that I didn't pay any attention to, but later realized that it was probably the most significant event in my life. And what was that? A few weeks after we were engaged, Walter said he wanted us to have dinner with an old high school friend of his. We went to a little restaurant I'd never been to in Little Italy, one of those family-run places, but pretty upscale. When we entered the restaurant, there was a strange feeling as if we had walked into someone's home, not a public place, and we weren't welcome there. Walter had a word with the maitre d', told him who we were meeting, and everything changed. We were ushered to the best table, and within 5 minutes the host came over with a bottle of the best wine as a gift. After that, the service was amazing. There were 2 waiters around at all times, and they were at the table before we could blink. We had eaten almost all of our dinner, and Walter's friend still hadn't shown up, when 2 large men walked in and seemed to survey the entire restaurant. One of them left, and the other took a seat a little behind us. Then the first returned with 2 other men, one of whom was very well dressed and about Walter's age, and the other much older. Walter stood up, hugged them both, and introduced me to his friend Tony and Tony's grandfather Salvatore. These 2 were quite unlike Walter. I mean, I had lived on Long Island all my life, and these 2 were deeply connected. I asked him about it later, but he claimed he didn't know anything, and Tony was just an old high school friend. Anyway, they didn't stay long. The old man made a short toast, and they drank to the success of our wedding. Tony gave me an early wedding present, beautiful diamond earrings that I later learned were worth $10,000, and they hugged before they left. No one showed up for the wedding, and I didn't see Tony for another 2 years. So, as they say, life went on. I had forgotten all about that dinner, the wedding, the moving, the furniture, and the house. Walter went to work every day, but he never seemed that ambitious. I asked him several times if he wanted to find new customers and expand the business, but he said he preferred what he had. Money was never an issue. I had no idea how much he actually had, but he never objected to anything I wanted to buy. So you've found marital bliss. Let's just say we've settled into married life. Walter is sweet, kind, gentle, but sometimes a girl wants a little more than tenderness in the bedroom. Growing up, I had a few guys who liked to ride me hard, but not Walter. And frankly, I missed it. I wasn't ready to give up on my marriage to Walter yet, at least not until I knew what he was worth, so I knew I had to be careful, but the need for something harder was there. I wasn't going to do anything at home. There were too many annoying people in the neighborhood, and the evenings were free, so I joined a gym. I wanted to work out and keep my body in shape, but I also added a personal trainer. Christopher made me bust my ass, pushing me to my limits in the gym and eventually outside of it. He was part Italian, about 5'85" tall, his body hard as nails. We began a secret affair, meeting in hotels several times a week for a day of fun and games. His stamina was incredible, and he gave me what I was missing. So, you had an affair. Did Walter ever find out about it? No, never. But it ended very badly, and it never happened again. Oddly enough, Walter had to leave for work for 2 days and a night, and Chris and I decided to get a hotel room for the night. We had never done that before, usually just spending an hour or 2 during the day, so it was going to be a treat for both of us. I don't remember much. I think we were both drugged somehow. Just sometime in the evening, we were bundled into a car and driven to a remote warehouse where several stout men arrived. I know Chris was in the business of selling steroids or something, so I assumed everything was connected to that. And I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. But things didn't look good. You mean you were kidnapped? What happened? How did you manage to get out, and did Walter find out about it? I noticed that her voice took on an even monotone tone as she told me the story, as if she had detached herself from everything that was going on. This, and the details she was giving, was a little unnerving. When the effects of the drugs wore off, I found myself tied to a chair. My arms and legs were wrapped in elastic bandages to keep them free of marks, and my mouth was taped shut so I couldn't speak. For some reason, they were very careful not to leave any marks on me. Chris, on the other hand, was suspended by his wrists with a rope that was tied somewhere. My chair opposite him, two men came out and roughly ripped off his clothes, tearing his shirt around his handcuffs. They spread a large plastic cloth underneath him and began beating him over and over with large, heavy chains. I could see blood splattering on the plastic and dripping from his wrists, where the handcuffs crashed into him as they beat him. They just kept beating him, and he kept screaming over and over again. She was silent for a moment and shuddered, then continued in the same even tone. After a while, Chris stopped screaming. I think he thankfully passed out. His body was covered in blood, one ear was partially hanging down, his nose was flattened and blood was still dripping from it, his eyes were swollen shut. A forklift pulled up with two 200-liter barrels on a pallet and some long-handled bolt cutters. They lifted Chris higher and set one of the barrels under him. Then one of the men put the bolt cutters to his balls and cut them off. I remember the blood rushing as those fell into the barrel. When Chris fell into the barrel, they must have cut the rope. They put a lid on it and hammered it down. Then they rolled up the plastic, put it and the bolt cutters in the other barrel, put them both on a pallet, and drove away. The man returned a few minutes later with two new barrels. I remember thinking I would be next, and I passed out. I sat silently listening, mesmerized. I had never heard such stories before, and even in my worst dreams, I had never expected such a thing. After a while, I woke up, still strapped to the chair. There was another chair across from me, and Walter's friend Tony was sitting in it. He had one of the men remove the blindfold from my mouth and one arm. I just sat frozen and stared at him. He pulled a flask from under his coat, poured a drink, and handed it to me. I remember taking a sip and coughing a little. Whatever it was strong, but I needed it. It was cold where we were, and I wasn't overdressed, and the alcohol warmed me from the inside out. Tony spoke in an even, soft voice. "Hey, Nip! Joanna, we're going to have a little talk, and I want you to be completely honest with me. Will you be able to do that for me, Joanna? If you do, we'll soon forget what happened, and you can come home safe and sound." I nodded silently. "Does Walter know about this man you're seeing?" "No, I don't think so. I've tried to make sure he never finds out." "Is there any chance that this man got you pregnant?" "No, I'm on birth control pills. I'm not ready to have children yet." "Does Walter know you're on birth control?" "No, he doesn't." "Do you love your husband, Joanna? Do you think you can make him happy?" "Yes, I do, and I know I can make him happy. I'm so sorry for what happened. I just had to—" He held up his hand and stopped me. "I'm not sure if you know this, but your husband is one of the most brilliant people I know. If he wanted to, he could be a brilliant writer and teacher. He's a genius at laundering money and hiding it from the authorities. Yet he has a small office and very few clients, it seems. These clients include my family and some of our friends and business associates. We have also provided his services for a fee to several cartels operating in this country. But despite these abilities, or maybe because of them, Walter is pretty strange. We realize that and just want to see him happy. There are many who want to see him happy, and they're willing to go to great lengths, as you could see today, to make that happen. We think you can help make him happy. I know I can make Walter happy because I love him. Let's not have any secrets between us. I talk to Walter a lot, and he loves you very much. He sees you as his perfect wife and the mother of his children, and I don't want him to be disappointed. We both know you're a gold digger, but what you didn't know is that Walter has a lot more gold than you can imagine. But if you try to get it, too many people will be upset by it and you won't be able to enjoy a single minute of it. After a while, my companions will return you to your car and see that you get home safely. Walter doesn't need to know about this. Wait a month for assurance and then stop taking birth control pills and give Walter the children he wants. Can you do that for me?" "Yes, I can." "I hope I never see you again, because if I do, you can't get away. You have 1,000 ways to die, from a car accident to a robbery, and Walter will never know the real reason. Just know that before that, you'll spend time here in hell. Don't ever give me a reason to talk to you again. Don't ever give me a reason to think that anything you do could make Walter unhappy." We both sat for a while, me too shaken to speak, and Joanna perhaps too excited by what she had told me. Then she finished the story. Walter never found out what happened. I never put him on notice. Every day I try to please him as if my life depended on it, because it did. About a month after that, I got a box in the mail that contained the earrings you see me wearing, and a card that said, Tony. I wear them every day to remember. What are those earrings? She took one off and held it out to me. There was a gold perfect miniature of a 200-liter barrel. 2 empty barrels on a pallet she now wears every day as a reminder of what she should be. The end.